Kaiju, Dragon Ball, Pokemon, and more. It's Steven's Toy Reviews. Hello there, collectors. It is Steven here, and I'm bringing you an onslaught of DC vs. Dark Horse figures thanks to NECA releasing them as convention exclusives. We're going to go ahead and kick off this stream of reviews with the Armored Batman vs. Predator set. This set was exclusive to SDCC 2019, even though it had another pre-order opportunity at NYCC when those figures went up for order. But anyway, this set here is going to recreate Armored Batman versus the Predator from some older comics, or one issue, whatever you'd prefer to look at it as. At the end of the day, though, we have a new Batman from NECA and another Predator. But is it going to be worth the now aftermarket price? Well, let's take a look to see whether or not it's worth adding into your collection. This is going to be a disclaimer I'm going to put in all of the DC vs. Dark Horse set reviews. The paint on these guys is rather concerning because not only are we going to have some paint flakage due to the fact that the joints were kind of gucked up with paint, as you can kind of see here on some choice examples, I also had to spend about a collective hour to hour and a half heating up all the figures and freezing them so this way I could loosen up the joints and get some of that stuck thick paint to crack. So if you're going to be getting this set or any other set, you are going to have to probably put in some effort to make sure that they all work. Out of all of the figures, I only had one that worked perfectly fine on the box. That was the Sinestro Corps Predator. Everything else almost broke something. First things first, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Armored Batman here. And I do have to say that this Batman design is rather unique, and I think NECA did a rather nice job with the sculpt for the armor here. All of the DC superheroes for these 4 sets released at the different major conventions in 2019 share the exact same body with just some slight retools here and there to accommodate for things like boots, hands, symbols on the chest, head, so on and so forth. So for the main body, the sculpt is pretty neat. We do have some veins here and there, make it look like Batman's been seriously lifting, but what's really going to be the draw for this set is going to be the armor. It can come off, and we'll take a look at that in just a little bit, but for the main attraction for Batman, the sculpted detail, it does look rock solid. For the armor, we do have some intricate little shading here and there for different parts. It's not going to be a straight metallic color, silver to be more specific, but it actually has some weathering to it. Now, something you may note on the abs of this Batman, it looks like there are 2 gray splotches. Those are actually paint chips that came that way out of the box. It's not a feature, but on mine it's pretty rad. Yeah. We do have some battle damage to the armor and the sculpt, which does look great as well, considering he's going to be going toe-to-toe with the Predator. The only real quality control issue that I have on mine, aside from a stuck joint, which broke, we're going to be taking a look at that in a little bit, is that on the left gauntlet, there is a little too much glue on the blade. So, yeah. That's a little bit of a bummer. Then we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the cape, which unfortunately doesn't have any bendy wire in it whatsoever, so it's not going to have any articulation like the SDCC released Shredder from the Capture of Splinter set. His cape had some wire. This one has none, so it's just going to sit there. Unfortunately, mine has been sitting in the box since I opened it, and the unfortunate part comes into play where it's starting to look just a little tattered. So even though it is made of actual cloth just sitting in the box, it is starting to look a little rough. But overall, I do think Batman is a rather solid win. Moving right along to the Predator here, it's not necessarily NECA's fault, but I'm not too impressed with the Predator design-wise. To be honest with you, if you're just kind of a casual fan and you were looking to more so get Batman here, well, the Predator is just going to kind of look a bit generic. We don't have any wacky colors here, kind of like the Green Lantern set Predator. We don't have any sort of Kenner-inspired tribute here. It's just going to kind of look like a not-so-similar City Hunter, or maybe even Jungle Hunter. I don't know. It depends on your personal cup of tea. But that doesn't mean that the actual quality of the figure isn't going to be good. It actually is pretty solid. We do have some nice paint applications for the mask. It has a little bit of blue and brown mixed in, and that general feel is going to be carried out throughout the Predator, which is going to be a mismatch of parts from previous Predators released previous Predator's release with some minor new sculpted details here and there. We do have the hoses on the figure, which you are going to need to be careful of. And when we take a look at his blaster backpack, you're going to see that right out of the box, one of them was disconnected for me. But we do have some finer details with the netting, which looks fantastic. We do have evenly masked beads for the dreads. The necklaces that this Predator has are pretty cool, and I didn't have any issues with the wrist blades pulling it out of the box. There is one issue with articulation, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, but overall, in terms of looks, this Predator does look pretty good. So we started off the sculpt and paint section with Batman. Let's go ahead and talk about the Predator, which, yeah, the articulation is pretty much going to be the same for what you know and love. We have the head, which plugs into the neck on a peg, and then that moves around on a ball. So this way we can move the Predator's head from side to side, so on and so forth. Pretty decent range of movement. Not too shabby. Then we do have the backpack cannon with a nice broken tube. So the caster, the gun here, is on a hinge, and it's rather loose on mine. And then there's a ball joint where the actual blasting portion plugs in. Unfortunately, with it being so small and it's stuck, I can't really free that up. So c'est la vie. It also doesn't like to really stick in too well, especially when you're attaching and detaching. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the shoulders, where we are going to have swivels, so this way we can move the arms forward and back. And then we have hinges, so this way we can move the arms up and down. Do be careful of the tubes connecting the selected parts there. And the hinge here is stuck on mine. We do have bicep swivels, which are always gravy, and we have double hinged elbows, which is great. We do have the gauntlets, which plug in on swivels, so this way they can spin around. And for the hands, we are going to have swivel hinge combos there, so this way we get some decent movement there. For the computer on the Predator's gauntlet there, it does flip open. The hatch does anyway on a hinge. And then we do have the wrist blades, which just slide out. Pretty cool. We do have an ab crunch, which does it really work? It's okay. Not the best, but it's there. Good job, NECA. We do have a ball jointed waist, which is good. We have swivels for the hips to move them forward and back, and hinges, so this way we can move them out. Do be careful if you're going to be using the disc there, not to break that. We do also have thigh swivels. Very cool. We do have double hinge knees, so this way they can bend just like that, and super duper ball jointed ankles. Now, something I really want to stress here is that if any of your joints are stuck and you're going to see this coming up with Batman, do not force anything because you will probably break it. Even so far as this top hinge joint on my Predator's knee, yep, it is not getting freed up, despite the fact I did a very thorough heat and cold treatment. So you use heat to loosen some stuff up, and then sometimes you use cold to help snap stuff in place because that will thicken up the paint and you can crack it. But anyway, Predator's articulation is okay once you get stuff moving. Time to talk about Batman's articulation now that we're done with the Predator. And I love it and I hate it. Why? Well, first and foremost, all of the DC superheroes in the Versus Dark Horse sets are going to be using the same body, just with some repainting and slight retooling. But that's not why I hate it. I actually do love it because the bodies are pretty dang sweet. So what do we have? The head plugs into the neck on a ball joint, but just because of this particular sculpt, the head likes to pop off of the neck joint, so that's pretty not awesome. But anyway, we get some good movement there. Batman can look in a whole bunch of different directions. We do have swivels, where the shoulders plug into the body, and then we do have hinges as well, so we can raise and lower Batman's arms, or bring them in and out on the front of his body. We do have dedicated bicep swivels, so that's fun to see there, and that actually is a much better improvement with the replacement part I got from NECA. Anyway, we do have double hinged elbows, which is pretty dang cool. Works nicely. Now, normally, we're going to have some fluid movement at the wrist, but because Batman's got these big old gauntlets, which we can take off, we'll see that in a second, we do have swivel hinge movement, but it is a bit restricted. We do have a dedicated hinge ab crunch, which does work, and pop off Batman's head. So there you go. We do have a waist joint. I believe that's just a swivel. On Superman, I can get a little bit of rocker movement, but unfortunately, I can't get that here, so I do think that is a swivel. We do have swivels at the hips, so this way we can spin Batman's legs forward and back just like that, and hinges, so this way we can have him do the splits if you need. Ooh. We do have misaligned hip joints there, huh? Wonder what that means. Maybe I'll make a video about that. But don't worry, that's perfectly fine. We do have thigh swivels, as to be expected. We do have double hinge knees. For the boots, they are going to swivel around. For the ankles, we are going to have a hinge, which allows you to move the feet forward and back, and swivels where that peg plugs into the foot, so this way we can get some ankle rocker movement, and of course, a toe hinge, which is always fun. Let me go ahead and get Batman's head here. There we go. Now, one thing I really want to stress is that pretty much with everything that came out of these DC versus Dark Horse sets for the SDCC and NYCC stuff, I had to spend about a good half hour to an hour on everything combined, heating it up, letting it cool down, throwing it in the freezer, pulling it out before I was able to get everything to crack and move just fine. So if you have a stuck joint, don't force it. Just keep it going. Now, the reason why I say this is that that shoulder is not the original shoulder for this Batman. This is the original shoulder joint. And as we can see here, it tore, right? Because the joint was stuck. Now, NECA was able to send me a replacement part for this particular shoulder. I actually think it may have been for the NYCC Batman, but I digress. The reason being is that they only had the shoulder part. And I had to use my diamond-encrusted bit from my Dremel to get out the rest of the part that was in the bicep. So it was stuck in there pretty good. I mean, this is the actual ring that plugs in to the bicep from the shoulder. So, yeah. So if you have anything that's stuck, kids, don't force it. Don't force it at all. And I didn't force this. I let it sit in the freezer overnight, and I heated it up, and it was fun seeing Batman in the freezer. But anyway, moral of the story, if it's stuck, treat it. If it's not, it will work just fine. Time to talk about accessories here, and Batman is a little light. Why is that? Well, Batman does come with an extra right-hand part to hold the weapons that he comes with, which are going to be a gun and a bat, and then he does have a sort of opaque visor that just slots into the head sculpt to cover up his eyes. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at the different weapons he comes with. He does come with the right-hand part to hold them both. Now, the bat, it doesn't really fit in his hand too well. It's going to sit in at an angle unless you slide the hand all the way up to about the mid portion of the bat. Then it will sit in just fine. Now, for the quality control for the bat, the paint is looking a little thin here, a little thicker there. But that kind of makes it look like a real wood. So that's not necessarily an entirely bad thing. There is also a blood splatter decal on here from the Predator. So once he starts beating the crap out of it, guess what? The bat turns green. Taking a look at the gun, which Batman is always known for, it is rather simplistic. It's made of a very hard plastic, so make sure that when you're putting it into Batman's hand, you're not going to be breaking anything, and that's about it. All right, so now taking a look at the visor, it just sort of slots in over Batman's head. It has a nice groove in the actual head sculpt of itself, so this way it can just fit in, but mine really does like to fall off. So make sure you are, well, at least not going to let Batman take a shelf dive, because then that thing is going to pop off and disappear. Now, as I made mention before, the armor on Batman is actually, well, an accessory in some ways. You can take off almost all the parts of the armor, which is going to include the neck piece, the torso piece, the gauntlets, and the pieces on the thighs. So this way you can get a somewhat vanilla Batman, which is missing the symbol on the chest. So neato. Now, if you're looking for a more detailed look at the vanilla Batman body, well, you know what? I think there's going to be a review of the Batman versus Joker Xenomorph set, so you're going to have to look out for that. Now we're going to go ahead and move on over to the Predator, which is going to come with a normal head sculpt, the Backpack Blaster, 2 extra hands, one left, one right. He's going to have his infamous disc and a not combi stick. It's going to be closer to a spear. So let's go ahead and take a look at that normal head sculpt, which be careful when you're taking a look at this, because I have seen some with some rather iffy eyes. So yeah, you don't want this one going wall-eyed or even cross-eyed. I've seen it before. Now, the Predator is going to come with 2 extra hands, one left and one right. The left hand part is going to be a splayed hand, while the right hand is sort of clenched up in a way, and I guess it's meant to hold the disc, but to be honest with you, it doesn't really work too well. The fingers don't fit in the hole, so yeah, I mean, you can use it for that. Speaking of the disc, it does fit on the Predator's right thigh, but it does have a little bit of a rubbery tip along the holder of it, so you're going to have to actually fit it in, and once it's in, it's just fine. Once you get the figure, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Then we do have that spear that the Predator has, which has some nice detailing to it. It actually has a black wash to help bring out some of the finer details. So if you're looking for a rather unique Predator weapon, congratulations, you get this. Then, of course, we are going to have that backpack, which I talked a little bit about before, but it's going to have some nice blue and brown dry brushing and washes to it to really help enhance the details on that more so gray plastic. And, of course, we do have that tube on it, which unfortunately did pop out in package, which is a bit of a bummer. So overall, for accessories for these two, they basically hit the mark. The Predator is just fine, but for Batman, he absolutely needed a left-hand part to hold weapons and some splayed hands. If he would have come with that, he'd have been perfect. Now it's time for a size comparison, and just to make this section easier in editing, I put all of the respective Comic-Con sets together, so this way you can see how big they are with your other figures. So for an example, all of the SDCC figures will be together, and all the NYCC figures will be together. Okay? Okay. So as you can see here, these superheroes look just fine in the 7-inch scale, and your Predators and Aliens, yeah, well, guess what? They're going to be your standard size. So, buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. It's very unfortunate that my Batman had a quality control issue, which resulted in me contacting NECA customer service, and I had to do about 25 minutes extra work to get it to work. But once that was all taken care of, Batman is pretty sweet, despite the fact that he doesn't look quite like the prototype, and the Predator, take it or leave it. Yep. That's pretty much going to be the reason why this is going to be the lowest price of the 4 sets on the aftermarket. Batman's cool, Predator, not so much, but Batman is cool enough. I think the set is worth the purchase. Or at least just the Batman on his own. Well, collectors, that brings us to the end of the video today, and I just wanted to take a second to thank you so much for watching. Now, you've heard a lot from me. I'd like to hear a little bit from you. Drop in the comments down below whether or not you liked it, you hated it, or maybe you were somewhere in between. I also want to take an extra second here for a nice, humongous thank you to all the patrons for SDR over the last month who have really helped the channel grow into what it can be today. So to all of you, 2 big thumbs up. Thank you very much. And now the end card should be popping up, which will give you a few clickable links, like maybe to subscribe or head on over to my Patreon, or some short URLs like to my social media or to my Teespring store. There's also a video I hand selected for you, so if you want to watch another STR video, I hand selected some good content for you to watch, so definitely check out that video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next video.